Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. I just wanted to take some time to read to you the story of Saint Valentine, since he was a real man who really lived and who loved and lived for Jesus. So here is the story and the legend of Valentine. He's more than candy hearts and cards. On February 14th, we celebrate Valentine's Day by giving our friends notes and candy hearts with messages like, "Be my Valentine," or "Will you be mine?" But Valentine's Day is much more than hugs, hearts, cards, and kisses. It all began with a man named Valentine who loved Jesus very much. Valentine, or Valentinus as he was known, was born more than 200 years after Jesus' birth in a land called the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was so big, it stretched all the way across Europe and parts of East and North Africa. It was also very powerful, conquering any tribe or people that dared to invade its territory. Rome was ruled by a harsh emperor named Claudius, who was so mean that some called him Claudius the Cruel. He was a tall man and had eyes of fire. Many said he was so strong he could knock the teeth out of a man or an animal with just one punch. Claudius was also very skilled in battle and conquered the tribes that tried to invade the Romans. But more and more people were becoming a threat to their empire. "We need more soldiers to defeat these barbaric invaders," complained Claudius. So he began his search for strong young men to fight with him. Posters were soon hung in the cities and villages announcing the emperor's call for soldiers. "Fight for Rome against the barbaric tribes that threaten our empire," they said. But few men responded to the emperor's call for soldiers. They knew they would have to leave behind their loved ones, their wives, mothers, fathers, children, or women that they had promised to marry. And they wouldn't see them for 25 years. That's how long they required you to be a soldier in the Roman Empire. Claudius became very angry that few of the men wanted to join and be soldiers. So he created a new law. "No one will get married, and there will be no weddings or engagements," declared Claudius the Cruel. The people of Rome could not believe what they had heard. No weddings? They cautiously whispered in their homes and on the streets. How could the emperor do such a thing? Young men and women engaged to be married were heartbroken. Now what will we do, they wondered. There was a church leader who was also surprised and saddened by the emperor's new rule. This was Valentinus. Valentinus was very troubled. Marriage was God's idea, and no emperor could hinder what God had created. "If we choose to marry couples secretly, we could go to prison," he said to Marius, who served with him in the church. The people of Rome already knew Valentinus and Marius would not worship the Roman gods. This could get us into even more trouble, they agreed, but they decided obeying God was worth the risk. So deep in the woods, under the cover of the midnight darkness, couples would meet Valentinus to join them in marriage. But it wasn't long before the news of Valentinus and his secret weddings got to Claudius the Cruel. "Arrest the traitor Valentinus at once," Claudius said, as his guards went to arrest him and dragged him before the emperor. Valentinus's ankles and wrists were put in chains as he stood before Emperor Claudius and members of the court. Then the emperor looked fiercely at the man who had disobeyed. "What is this I have heard of you, Valentinus? Why will you not leave in peace by obeying my laws, worshiping the Roman gods, and turning your back on your God?" Valentinus looked up at the emperor and said, for all to hear, "If you knew about the grace of God, you wouldn't have asked me to deny him and worship your idols." Claudius was stunned and shouted, "How dare you challenge me?" As he sat on his throne, the emperor glared at the defiant priest standing before him and asked him another question. "Is Jesus really God's son?" Valentinus smiled and said, "Yes, Jesus is God's son, and if you believe in him, your soul can be saved." Claudius sat on his throne and thought hard about what Valentinus had just said. Suddenly, Claudius stood up and exclaimed, "This man's words make sense! What is wrong with asking Jesus to save our souls?" The chief prison guard named Marcus stood up and said, "Emperor, you must be being misled by the words of this criminal. Why should we turn our backs on worshiping the Roman gods when this is what we've been taught since we were children?" Fearing he might also be arrested, Claudius changed his mind and cried, "Take this criminal away. He is to be put to death for breaking my laws." Marcus grabbed Valentinus by the arm and led him to his prison cell. Marcus took the rusty iron key from his belt and turned the lock in the cell door, throwing Valentinus into the cold, hard dirt floor. But Valentinus knew he was not defeated. He had just told the Emperor Claudius the Cruel about Jesus Christ. Even the court officials had heard. He rejected Jesus, he thought, but maybe sometime he will accept him. One day, while Valentinus was in his cell, Marcus stood guard and he began to pray. "Lord Jesus, you are light. Fill this prison with your light in such a way that those who are here will know that you are God." When Marcus heard this prayer, he turned toward Valentinus and said, "You say God is light, but my daughter has been blind since birth. If your God can make her see, then I will believe." So Valentinus prayed that God would cause his daughter's blind eyes to see. The next morning, legend says that Valentinus was awakened by the sound of Marcus coming. As soon as he sat up on his straw mat, Marcus grabbed the bars of his cell and shook them, exclaiming, "She can see, my daughter can see." And he and his entire family decided to believe in Jesus. But not long after Marcus's daughter was healed of blindness, in fact, legend says it was maybe even the day before, he had to follow through on the punishment for Valentinus. And Valentinus was put to death for marrying couples against the emperor's law and refusing to worship the Roman gods. The day of his death was February, you guessed it, 14th. And that is why we remember this day, because 200 years later, after Valentinus died, a leader in the church declared February 14th to be the day Christians would honor and remember the courageous life of Valentinus. Now you know why Valentine's Day is more than chocolates, cards, and candied hearts. It's a day we can remember Valentinus and celebrate his courage to tell the emperor about Jesus. Marry couples in secret and love no other God but God alone. There is a part of that legend that the night before he died, he wrote a note to that jailkeeper's daughter who had been healed and able to see. And of course, he signed it, "From your Valentine." And so that is maybe where we get the idea of sending cards and letting others know that we love them on Valentine's. Later, Valentine was recognized as one of the first Christian martyrs under the persecution of Claudius II. Over time, the word saint has been dropped from the title of the day, removing from society the memory of the Christian reason for the celebration. Even when I was growing up, we still said Happy St. Valentine's Day, or we called it St. Valentine's Day. So it's our job to reclaim this holiday and remember the great love our Father has for us. 1 John 4:19 says, "We love because He loved first." Happy Valentine's Day.